The Chicago Bulls' improved play since the All-Star break has been in question by many on how legitimate is it, and is it something that the Bulls have actually turned a bit of a corner with? We'll talk a little bit about that on today's episode and why. The true test of if the Chicago Bulls have turned a corner won't really happen until next year. We'll talk a little bit about that, plus the Bulls locking in a play-in spot. And please, for the love of God, let the Giannis rumors stop. I'm going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Sarah Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go to get into this content for today, y'all. I want to talk about the validity of the Bulls post-All-Star break run, and we're going to get into that. We're also going to talk a little bit about why tanking needs to stop. I actually have a comment here from Mr. Sagittarius King, who he likes to leave comments but never responds to anybody checking him. So we're going to put him on the Summer Jam screen today. But with that said, before we get into that, I want to talk about, the validity of the Bulls post-All-Star break run, right? So since the All-Star break, the Bulls are tied for the 9th best record since the All-Star break. They've gone 12-9 over that time, which would be good enough for a 46 win rate, right? So if the Bulls were able to play with that pace over an entirety of a season, they'd be on pace to win 46 games. Now, of course, you can't take that and make that necessarily be how they're going to start off the season. They're going to make changes. Other teams are going to make changes. But it's no doubt that the Bulls have been playing better. Right now, there have been some concerns raised from, of course, people of, all right, well, look at the competition they're facing off against. How are they facing off against teams above 500? All those type of questions remain. And here's the thing. I think those are fair questions, right? I think in the interest of fairness, those are questions that you can ask and can be, hey, legitimate. But I want to put that into perspective. The Bulls against teams with above 500 records have 13 wins against those teams. The Milwaukee Bucks only have 11 wins against teams with above 500 records. The Detroit Pistons only have 10 wins against teams with above 500 records. The New York Knicks only have 12 wins against teams with above 500 records, right? So let's be clear here. Throughout all the turmoil and how the Bulls season started and all that type of stuff, the Bulls have more wins against above 500 teams than teams that are legitimately in the playoff hunt, right? So while, yes, the question about the wins with the teams with winning records is a valid one, but let's not act like you can't still be a playoff team with having a shaky record against teams with above 500 records. It just is what it is, right? And, the thing that when you look at the record against teams with below 500 records, 21-17, right? The Bulls are also 2-1 in overtime games. So there's something to be said about that, right? When you look at close games decided by 3 points or less, the Bulls are 6-4 in those games, right? So like the thing that I like to do, right? I love it when people just look at a stat and they just talk about that stat, right? Like a lot of content creators will say, well, I don't really believe in the Bulls record because they have a shaky record against teams with above 500 records. And it's like, all right, but let's look at what that means around the league, right? The Orlando Magic, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Detroit Pistons, and the New York Knicks. Those are 4 teams above the Chicago Bulls where the Bulls have better records than them against winning teams. So if you factor that part into the context of the full entirety of the season, it could be a mixed bag, right? It can go either way, right? You look at a team like the Miami Heat, they have 9 wins against teams with above 500 records, so there you go there, right? But it doesn't mean that it's going to go that way either. For example, the Atlanta Hawks have 16 wins against teams with above 500 records, and they're the 8th seed. They're only slightly above the Chicago Bulls, but they're below many teams with worse records against winning teams. So it's definitely one of those things that you can use. And again, it's a concerning stat nonetheless, right? But I think when you put it in context over what that really means for your chance of rising up the standings in your conference, it depends on how much you then beat up against the lower teams, right? So there's that part of it. Then let's look at the on the court play by the Chicago Bulls. Since the All-Star break, the Bulls have the 12th best best offensive rating in the game of basketball. They have the 13th best defensive rating in the game of basketball since the post All-Star break, right? So that again, that is something that, of course, that's higher, right? That's a little bit towards the middle of the pack as far as in the league, but it's upwards of that. So that again gives another data point to where you can look at and say, well, maybe this run by the Bulls is a little bit more sustainable, right? Like, I think for the people that use it to say things like, oh, well, the Bulls, look at the Bulls, they're beating the bad teams. Yeah, guess what? You have to beat the bad teams to also have a good record on the season, right? You have to do that. The Bulls have the 10th best overall net rating since the All-Star break as well. Like, it's as many as people want to throw doubts, I'm just saying that there are also things that you can look at and say, all right, this is why it could be valid in how the Bulls have played, right? Now, I was in a conversation with Australians is Free where he mentioned, hey, the Bulls have turned the corner. I said that I got to see it till next season before I can say that they turned the corner. But again, looking at those stats, even against my point and my stance, looking at those stats, you can see where you can make a case for the Bulls are, at least they're approaching that corner, right? The Bulls have also locked in a play-in spot, and we'll see how the Bulls perform over that. But the thing about this team, right, when you see the way that Coby and Josh Giddey, shout out to Coby White winning Eastern Conference Player of the Month, by the way, when you see the way that these players are playing, of course you got to ask how sustainable is it going to be, right? Now, I want to be clear here. Coby and Josh Giddey have been great, right? This is not a knock on them as players, and I am talking about both of them here. I'm not zeroing out Josh Giddey or Coby White, right? They're both going to have to show that they can do that to start off the season, right? There's going to be legitimate questions about their run, how productive they can be, all those things until they start off the season that way and maintain it for a season. Coby and Josh Giddey are going to hopefully, barring any crazy changes, which we know is bound to happen with the Chicago Bulls. You never know. AK seems to it's almost like AK just wants to be like, all right, hey, Coby, can you deal with this curveball? But barring any major changes, Coby and Josh Giddey should be coming into next season with the same role that they have this season, being responsible for creating much of the Bulls' offense, playing off each other, getting to the free throw line, putting pressure on defense in the middle, a fast-paced team. Hopefully we have a center that can that the Bulls can play with even a better pace and more shot blocking. But then, of course, you're looking at growth from players. How does Modest grow from year 1 to 2? Does Dalen Terry make does Julian Phillips make a third-year leap, right? What are you going to get from Julian Phillips to start the year? What are you going to get from Patrick Williams, right? Like those type of things. So, but when you look at these guys and what they've done in March, as much as is made by Coby, and it should be, Coby earned that Eastern Conference Player of the Month. But when you look at Josh Giddey, 20 points per game, 49% shooting from the field, 35% shooting from three-point range. That's with him having games where he got 0% from three-point range. So the shooting was really good from him. 76% from free throw range, getting to the free throw line 6 times, which is the most in his career, right? 1.5 steals per game, 9 rebounds, 9.5 rebounds, 9 assists. If Josh Giddey is able to be anywhere, I'd say this, if Josh Giddey for a season can average 18, 8, and 8, right? And I think that may be lowball. You know what? No, let's actually lowball it. 16, 8, and 8, right? If he can be between there, that's where you want Josh Giddey to be at, because ideally Josh Giddey wants to create for others and put other players in the right position and help them grow their game, right? You look at Coby White, 27.7 points per game, 49% shooting from the field, 37% shooting from three-point range with almost 5 rebounds, almost 4 assists per game, and almost a steal per game from him as well. If Coby can produce near that level for an entirety of a season, right, that's where you want him to be at. And they're coming into next season being the number 1 and 1A, 1B option on the team. That's just what they're doing, right? And, we'll see how that plays out, right? But right now, the Bulls and the way that they've been playing, there are signs that this could be something valid. But those questions are going to exist. And in fairness, they're not going to go away until the Bulls start off a season like this. And that's just for any player, right? I think that's for any player in the NBA, regardless of the team, is that if you go on a hot stretch to end the season, it's naturally, can he do it again next year, right? But then you look at teams like the Houston Rockets, who went on a crazy run at the end of last year, and they came into this season able to sustain it, mainly because they had young players that are growing. And with the Bulls going much younger with their roster, you hope that the Bulls can be that team as well, that they come into next season and this end-of-season run is more like what they're going to be for the entirety of next year, right? You also got a draft pick coming in here, a first-round pick coming in, regardless if it's in the lottery or not, in a deep draft. That's going to help this team as well, right? Mod is taking a leap, hopefully in year 2, right? Now, also there's a chance of a sophomore slump, right? That exists for a reason, but we're going to talk positivity into our team, right? Io's going to come back. Hopefully he can stay healthy for an entirety of a season, right? There's another player that we haven't talked a lot about because he's been kind of out of sight, out of mind, right? So the fact that the Bulls have been doing what they've done defensively without 2 of their best on-ball defenders in Lonzo and Io out also shows signs that maybe this defense could be even better. And you add a defensive threat big man to this, how does that then look for next season, right? So there's a lot of things that you're looking at with this season for the Bulls. And like I said, until the Bulls start off next season, the questions of validity are always going to be there. And don't take it personal. Like, don't take it personal as a shot to Giddey. Don't take it personal as a shot to Coby. It just is the nature of sports, right? When you finish something strong and you didn't necessarily look like that for the entirety of the year, there are going to be some doubts. And the Bulls, their job is to answer those questions with their play on the court. And hopefully, for once, the Bulls aren't changing a bunch of their players' roles, so then we can come in the next season, build off what we did last year, focus on knowing our role, don't have to relearn a new role, and it'd be good. Like, the best thing to happen for players like Coby and Josh Giddey is that, that Zach was traded and they've been thrust into being a more important role, because that way you're not waiting to start off next season and that's their first time playing that role, right? Because they traded Zach mid-season, now they gotten to finish the season as the 1A, 1B option, and now we get to see, all right, bet what's coming next, right? Now we know what it's taking. We finished the season. We played, by the end of this, they'll play almost 35 games with having those roles. All right, now how do you build off of it? And that's the biggest question here for the Bulls. Now, with that said, right, the Bulls did officially lock in a play-in spot. So the thing is let's stop the tanking conversations. But before we start that, I do want to talk about, I'm going to put this up on the screen. This is a comment from Mr. Sagittarius King 161, where he says this: I respectfully do not agree with you when it comes to the subject. You always bring up those process 76ers. OKC did tank from 21 to 22 down the stretch. They set players to preserve to get the lottery odds. The pro tankers aren't saying that the tank year. Let's handle that first part. The process. You really are bringing up the 76ers as a reason why tanking works? And this is why, again, the 76ers sent off talent. They missed on a lot of draft picks. Most of their draft picks through that process didn't stay with the team. And the Bulls, if I'm not mistaken, even though they have Joel Embiid and they got Joel Embiid, the Bulls have a better record than them, right? So if you're using the 76ers as a thing to try to gauge logic on tanking, I'm sorry, that's dumb. As far as the OKC in 21 and 22, go and look at the state that team was in. That team was not tanking. They were a young team that was learning. And they, even with the picks that they got, they weren't their own draft picks. My brother, you got to actually think if you're going to try to get into a conversation with me. And listen, I want to be clear here. I'm not doing this to be petty, but here's the thing. When people want to keep leaving comments, and then when they get responses to those comments, they do the hide the hand technique and don't ever respond, you're going to get put on the Summer Jam screen. Let's continue to go with this. The pro tankers aren't saying the tank year in and year out, but yet you brought up the 76ers. But at some point, you need high-end talent to go to the next level. The Chicago Bulls fans are tired of being in the play-in. First of all, spell play-in right, my brother. Playing in? Come on, bro. In a year out of there was no playing, the Bulls would think harder about tanking. The Bulls are stuck in mediocrity. Coby White is a good player. He's no superstar, and he's not going to carry you to the promised land, and neither is Josh Giddey. I respectfully disagree with your take on this. First of all, how do you disagree with my take on this when I never said that Coby White or Josh Giddey were the ones to lead you to the promised land? That is an idiotic thinking that people try to use to try to backdoor themselves into talking about tanking in a positive way. But you do need good players, right? You do need that, because guess what? You can be like the Portland Trailblazers and have a generational player and not go nowhere with them if you can't put the proper players around them. Dumbass. Let's get that together. Now, as far as the stuck in mediocrity, like, nobody's disagreeing that you need high-end talent to win. See, this is where people fail in understanding the difference between tanking and needing to value the draft. Where's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander drafted at? 11th? Where was Jalen Williams drafted at? 11th? Where was Nikola Jokic drafted at? Second round? The Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, those weren't even picks. They didn't even take to get those. Those were Brooklyn Net picks because they were smart in how they got their deals. The thing that we're saying against the pro tankers is that people conflate the argument that you need high-end talent to win, which is valid, with you need to tank to get that high-end talent, which is not true. You don't need to tank to get high-end talent. Yes, tanking gives you a better chance to get there, but it's not the end-all, be-all. Scouting, drafting well, making smart trades and moves, not necessarily trades to get a star, but in the assets that you get back. That's the smart thing in it. Being smart and scouting and putting in the work it has a better degree of success than just tanking and hoping that by having a top 4 pick and your team being bad, are you building winning instincts at that point in time? Are you building a winning culture at that point in time? No, you're building losing. And that's the problem. It's not just about, it'd be different if the Bulls didn't have any talent. To say that we shouldn't develop the talent that we have here, and if that talent through developing gets us more wins than expected, that's a better outcome than saying, let's jettison off any talent. Let's not develop any talent. Let's just focus on losing. That's a losing mindset that builds a losing culture, and then thus you're not getting anywhere. This is why when people try to conflate multiple different arguments to try to support tanking, they end up losing out against people who actually have critical thinking, because you just trying to, again, conflating the conversation of getting high-end talent with the need to tank to get that is stupid, right? It's just dumb. And then overlooking the fact of teams like Charlotte that did tank. What have they been able to do with it, right? Where are they at? So let's be clear here, right? Like tanking, there are, like when you look at it, what teams have been successful with tanking? You can say the Spurs, but they lost David Robinson. He was hurt. I don't consider that tanking, because had he not gotten hurt, they wasn't going to try to go after the number 1 pick. The Cavs for LeBron, yeah, but then he had to leave and come back, and they had 2 more first-round picks first overall picks that helped them push them to that place, right? So there you go on that one. Like, let's be clear here, right? Like, come on. Like, and this is where people fall, because they'll say things like, well, every championship team has a top 5 pick on it. Yeah, but how did they get that pick? That's the thing that you have to look at in all of this, right? Come on. Let's have critical thinking. Let's not just focus on just one aspect of it and then try to make it. Where was Giannis Antetokounmpo taken? Was he a top 5 pick? I mean, I'm just asking the question here, my boy. Right? Like, come on, man. Let's be clear here, right? I can understand if you were a team that's just naturally bad. Like the Wizards, they have really no talent. They should be tanking. The Brooklyn Nets, right? Their picks top 6 protected to Milwaukee, which is crazy enough. But this is why if you're going to try to challenge thinking, right, and then cower away when that thinking is challenged, this is where you end up on the Summer Jam screen. But let's move off of that. No more need for Petty Roosevelt. We're going to put Petty Roosevelt away for the rest of the day. We're going to focus back on basketball, right? So the Bulls have clinched their play-in spot. Cool, great. It is what it is there, right? There are going to be people like Sagittarius King who are triggered by that. It is what it is, right? The Bulls still have a lottery pick as of right now. We'll see what happens in the play-in. But shout out to the Bulls for locking something in, right? We'll see how that continues to go for the Bulls. And I think that when you look at this play-in tournament that initially kind of looked like, hey, these teams all in the play-in are playing bad, it slowly started to turn around now to where, like, Orlando, 6-4 in their last 10. The Atlanta Hawks, 5-5 in their last 10. The Miami Heat have won 5 in a row. The Chicago Bulls, 6-4 in their last 10. This play-in tournament is going to be a lot more competitive than I initially gave it credit for. And let's see how the Bulls come out of it. Either way, I think the Bulls are in a position to gain something from it. If they don't make it out the play-in, great, we get a lottery pick. If we make it out the play-in, we've done so through playing other teams that are hot. We're gaining experience for Josh Giddey and Coby and Buzelis, and Giddey and Coby, first off, being as prioritized as what they are. Modest as a rookie, right? We're gaining that XP there. And if we get a playoff berth, they can get a real taste of playoff basketball. And then we still got a chance at a hell of a talent, because this draft is so deep. If we're right outside the lottery, like pick 15, there's a chance that Asa Newell, Derek Queen, or one of those guys could be there, and we'll see what the Bulls then do there, right? But with that said, one last thing that I got to address before we get out of here, the Giannis Antetokounmpo rumors, right? Here's the thing. once again, and we have to address this, and this needs to be the last time. The Giannis thing started because Giannis had a video about 2 or 3 years ago at this point, where he said, I always dreamed about playing for Chicago because of being a Michael Jordan fan. And he specifically said, who knows? Maybe one day I'll play for Chicago. And then people have taken that, Giannis wants to play for Chicago. Did you hear that? Giannis wants to come to Chicago. And now they're conflating that with rumors that Giannis could be moved this offseason. Here's the thing. Bulls fans, I need everybody to get this in their head. The Bulls are not trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo or any other borderline star. Miles Turner, not happening. Bam Adebayo, not happening. AK has already said they don't want to give up any more first-round picks. The Bulls are actually going to do this thing where they build organically over time. The thing that he initially said he wanted to do when he took over this job. So Bulls fans, please, let's stop. The Giannis thing, I get it. Not everybody has time to go and spend time to dig through where rumors are starting from, where they're rooted from, and the validity of them. That's part of my job here. So I'm going to do my job here now by saying this and telling you guys, no, Giannis ain't coming. They're not trading for Bam. They're not trading for Miles Turner. They're not trading for Domantas Sabonis. They're not trading for LaMelo Ball. It's not happening. This team is actually going to try to do it over time. It does suck because now you potentially, unless a player really hits a great leap, you're going to have to sit there and watch a team that's fighting hard, scrappy for 2 to 3 years before they really get to the point of maybe being a consistent playoff team. But that fun is part of the process. And the fact that the Bulls tried to jumpstart that process before, and we saw it was not sustainable. Let's stop trying to skip steps and actually go through the process of getting somewhere that's going to be more sustainable over time. Stop it. That's my time. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you ready for Can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.